Madhava Gopala Keshava Govinda Madhava Gopala Keshava Jaya Nanda Mukunda Nanda Govinda Radhe Gopala Jaya Nanda Mukunda Nanda Govinda Radhe Gopala Govinda Madhava Gopala Keshava Giridhari Giridhari Jaya Radhe Gopala Giridhari Giridhari Jaya Radhe Gopala Giridhari Giridhari Jaya Radhe Gopala Ghana Shyama 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 Jai Jai Radhe Gopala Ghana Shyama 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 Jai Jai Radhe Gopala Govinda Madhava Gopala Keshava Nanda Govinda Radhe Gopala Jaya Nanda Mukunda Nanda Govinda Radhe Gopala Govinda Madhava Gopala Keshava
Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Om Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramopanishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavasthita Tadgatena Manasa Yasyantam na vidussura suraganaha Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha. Let us see the entire 9th chapter in brief. In the first 3 verses, Bhagavan praises this knowledge, saying it is Rajavidya, the royal knowledge, royal secret, the greatest purifier, the one which can be experienced as one's own direct self, the one which can be easily practiced, and after gaining which the result is imperishable. And what is the result? Liberation from samsara is the result. And then Bhagavan gives the knowledge. What is that knowledge? Bhagavan describes his own nature. So now we have seen 6 points. What are they? Number 1, Sarvagataha, all pervading. Number 2, Avyaktaha, that which cannot be known through our sense organs. Number 3, Mithya Jagat Adhishthanam, the very substratum, the very support for the illusory world. Number 4, Jagataha Srishti Sthiti Laya Karanam, the very cause of the creation, maintenance and dissolution of the entire universe. Number 5, Asanga Surupaha, though the entire creation happens in the Lord, he is totally unaffected by it, totally detached. Asanga Surupaha. And 6th one, Kartrutva Bhoktrutva Rehitaha, one free from doership and enjoyership. So after having given the nature of Bhagavan, now Bhagavan speaks about different types of devotees. First of all, he speaks about those people who have no faith in this knowledge and what kind of lifestyle they lead. The entire life goes in vain in chasing illusory pleasures of life. They are cheated, Bhagavan says. But on the contrary, the Mahatmas, having known this great knowledge, they dedicate their life in gaining the supreme knowledge. And then Bhagavan speaks about those people, no doubt they are worshippers of God, but they don't want God as the goal. They want pleasures of the world as the goal, Swarga as the goal. So what happens to them? So Bhagavan says, these pleasures of the world, they are impermanent. So total wastage of time and effort is the only result. Then Bhagavan speaks about another class of devotees. Who are they? They are Anya Devata Bhaktaha. According to them, there is no one single God. There are so many different gods with independent powers, capable of blessing independently. This is their understanding. So what do these people do? They have different devatas. For each desire to get fulfilled, they go to different devatas. So yesterday I was mentioning some Rahu, Ketu, Shani, etc. So some people got really confused. Now see, we have to understand, nothing wrong in worshipping Shani, etc. What is wrong is, don't think that they have independent powers. That is the point to be noted. The power which they have is coming from one single source. So nothing wrong in worshipping them, provided you must know they don't have individual powers. So go through the right channel. Have the right understanding. This is the whole point. Worship any God, but understand there is only one God. Now what is Bhagavan criticizing here? Those Anya Devata Bhaktaha, they go to these demigods or inferior gods because these inferior gods bless you instantaneously, immediately. Quick is the result which you gain from these gods. Whereas if you approach the Supreme Lord, He will not give you what you want, because He is your well-wisher, not your wish fulfiller. So sometimes He takes His own time. Sometimes He may answer your prayers in negative. So therefore, what do these people do? They don't have patience, and therefore immaturely they go for all these inferior devatas. This is how you have to understand. So ultimately, though these Anya Devatas, they bless you, but in the long run, it does you more harm than good. So therefore Bhagavan says, Ataha te chavanti, they fall. Right. Now Bhagavan says how worshipping him is the easiest. Let us chant verse number 26. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachhati tadaham bhaktyupahritam asnami prayatatmanah. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachhati tadaham bhaktyupahritam asnami prayatatmanah. Yes, Bhagavan says it is very, very easy to worship me. You don't need too much of things. Patram. Patram means a leaf. Pushpam, a flower. Phalam, a fruit. If you don't have any of these, don't worry. Toyam. Toyam, water. Offer whatever you can. But what is important? Yome bhaktya prayachati. The one who gives with bhakti, with devotion. Tadaham bhakti upahartam asnami. That which is given to me, offered unto me with love, with devotion, I eat, I take, I receive. Prayatatmanaha, of that pure souled one, pure hearted one. So what is important here? When you worship the Lord, the most important thing is not what you give, but with what attitude you give. Now in this verse, which term is repeated twice? The term bhakti is repeated twice. See this. Yome bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhakti upahartam. So what is important? Bhakti is important. Bhagavan doesn't see how much money you have spent for your puja. How many people have attended? No. How long you have been sitting for puja? No. How complicated your rituals are, your mantras are? No. What does he see? He sees only one. Is your heart involved when you pray? Can you bring some few drops of tears from your eyes? Can you melt your heart? This is what he sees. Only few moments of such heartfelt prayer is enough, and you will find the mind becomes absolutely cheerful and peaceful. You will come to know whether Bhagavan is really pleased with your puja, your meditation, your prayer or not. You will come to know. What is the proof? Once that puja is over, your mind becomes peaceful, cheerful. This is the sign. And this is a direct sign that Bhagavan is pleased with you. Normally our puja is time based. This many minutes I will give. Fine, nothing wrong. But in those minutes, be dead to the world. Develop only this relationship. Invoke only the relationship with God. Be totally available. Don't sit with your mobile phone by the side. Let not your mind wander into the world. All those pujas are not accepted by God. He says he has no time for me. Even though he is in front of me, he is doing all those, what you call dhupa, deepa, naivedya, etc. But he is interested in the world only. Isn't it? It is something like a guest comes to your house and you don't pay any attention to the guest. You are sitting watching TV. Now how will the guest feel? Isn't it? You are not interested in him. In the same way, many of us, when we sit for meditation, when we sit for puja, we are not interested in God. What is the proof? Wandering mind is the proof. Simple. Isn't it? So here Bhagavan makes it very clear. What am I looking for? I am not looking for what you are giving. What I am looking for is with what love you are giving. How much you are involved in your prayer, in your sadhana. That is what is important for me. What you are giving, I am not interested in it because it is ultimately mine only. The world is my creation, so patram pushpam phalam toyam. Whose is it actually? It is mine. So it is something like you pluck a flower from the garden of the owner and give it to the owner. From his own garden you pluck the flower and give it. What is the use? Anyway, Bhagavan receives it. It is not, at least he is giving. That itself is a great thing, right? The point is, Bhagavan looks for devotion. Bhagavan looks for love. So bhakti is the most important thing. Now one person says, Bhagavan, I don't have time to do puja. You say offer this, that, etc. But my lifestyle is such that I have no time at all to sit for puja or japa or meditation, etc. Bhagavan says, doesn't matter. For you also, I will give you the way to reach me. What is that? Let us chant 27, 28. Yat karoshi yadasnasi yad juhoshi dadasi yat yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam Shubha Shubha Phalairevam Mokshase Karma Bandhanaihi Sannyāsayoga-yuktatma Vimukto Mamupaishyasi Yat karoshi yadasnasi yad juhoshi dadasi yat yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam shubha shubha phalairevam mokshase karma bandhanaihi sannyāsayoga-yuktatma vimukto mamupaishyasi. Yes. Bhagavan says, fine, if you don't have time for puja, etc., doesn't matter. Only do this much. What you have to do? Yat karoshi, whatever you do. Yad asnasi, whatever you eat. Yad juhoshi, whatever you sacrifice. Dadasyat, whatever you give. Yat tapasyasi, whatever tapas you do. Tad kurushva mad arpanam. Offer it to me. That's all. Now you can't escape. Whatever you eat, is there anyone who doesn't eat? No. So whatever you eat, whatever you do, whatever job you are involved in, whatever responsibilities you are trying to fulfill, whatever it is, just have this attitude, Bhagavan, I offer it unto you. Bas. If this much is done, that itself I will consider it as a worship. Now see how wonderful this Bhagavan is. Other little gods, all their rituals are very complicated and lot of money is involved there. Complicated mantras are involved, rituals are involved. You have to depend on so many people for all that. But here is a Bhagavan who is the highest, omniscient, omnipotent, and he is saying, reaching me is very, 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 very easy. So what is the message here? Bhagavan says, the body which I have given you, the mind which I have given you, the intellect which I have given you, whatever activities you do with your body, mind and intellect, I don't say don't do it, do it. But in the end say, Bhagavan, it is yours. Bhagavan, this body you have given me, the mind and intellect you have given me, the field to perform action you have given me, the talents you have given me, the abilities you have given me, the intelligence you have given me. Bhagavan, whatever you have given me, may I do my best with the gift that you have given me, and whatever I do, let it be my gift unto you. Bas, that's all what is needed. Bhagavan, whatever you have given, this body, I am only a caretaker of your instrument. This is the attitude. This body, mind and intellect, this is your instrument. Who am I? I am only a caretaker. Right? If this attitude, now this is nothing but, what is the yoga? Karma yoga. The essence of karma yoga is put, which in detail comes in 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Performing all actions in order to please the Lord. So naturally all your actions will be dharmic, righteous. So what is the goal of this devotee? The goal is only one, to please the Lord. So every time he performs his duties, the one question he asks himself is, Bhagavan, are you pleased with my action? That's all. I offer it unto you. This much if you can do, then you need not sit for any puja. Whatever activities you do, whatever responsibilities you fulfill, that itself becomes greatest puja. Jagata ishadhi yukta sevanam ashtamurti bhrad deva pujanam. Isn't it? Jagata sevanam itself is deva pujanam. Service of the world with ishadhi, thinking that it is my service unto the Lord, worship unto the Lord, itself is the greatest puja. This is what Ramana Maharshi says in Upadesha Sāra. Yes. Then what happens to such a devotee? Shubha ashubha phalaihi karma bandhanaihi mokshyase. Such a person who performs all his activities as a worship of the Lord, what happens to him? Karma bandhanaihi mokshyase. He becomes free from all kinds of bondages of action. Shubha ashubha phalaihi mokshyase. He becomes free from shubha ashubha phala. He becomes free from all kinds of punya and papa karmas. So when you are performing action as an instrument of the Lord, those actions will bring results. Now where does the result go? It doesn't go to him, it goes to God. Because what is his attitude when he performs action? Bhagavan, I am not the doer, you are the doer, I am only an instrument. So whoever is the doer will have to enjoy the results. So now that he doesn't have the doership in him, so therefore the results goes to Bhagavan, it doesn't affect him. The results may be good or bad. Remember, it is a karma phala which binds us to this world. We come back again and again to this world in order to enjoy or suffer our karma phala. Now what is happening to this devotee? Karma phala doesn't touch him. So thus he becomes free from birth, death cycle. And then what happens? Karma bandhanaihi mokshase vimuktaha mam upaishyasi. Such a person becomes liberated and attains me. Who is he? Sannyāsayoga-yuktaha atma. The one who is endowed with the yoga of sannyas. So what is sannyas? Sannyas is not giving up your responsibilities and running away into some cave and meditating. That is not sannyas. Real sannyas is the renunciation of the attitude of I and mine. Aham, mama. This is the real sannyas. Such a person is called Sannyāsayoga-yuktaha. Bhagavan, everything belongs to you, not to me. So whatever you have given me, whatever abilities you have given me, let me perform my actions as a worship of you. Bas. This way he becomes free. So now can you say, I have no time for this? You can't. It is only a matter of attitude. A change of attitude. That's all what is needed. Remain in the world. Fulfill the responsibilities. Taking care of husband, wife, children, parents. Yes, everything is accepted. At the same time, you can be a yogi. That is what Bhagavan says. To become a yogi, you need not renounce the world. It is possible. Such a person is called, Sannyāsayoga-yuktaha. Such a person is a real sannyasi. This is the message of Bhagavad Gita. Face the world, face the challenges of the world, the problems of the world, remaining in the world. Remaining in the world also, you can attain the highest. So now a question comes. Bhagwan, are you partial or impartial? The way you are describing yourself, it appears that you are very partial. Yoga kshemam vahamyaham, etc. you have said. Meaning what? You are partial to your devotees. Now Bhagwan clarifies that point. Let us chant verse number 29. Samoham sarva bhuteshu na me dveshyosti na priyah ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya mayi te teshu chapyaham samoham sarva bhuteshu na me dveshyosti na priyah ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya. It appears that Bhagwan is very partial to his devotees, right? Now Bhagwan says, no, I am impartial only. Samaha aham sarva bhuteshu. Sarva bhuteshu aham samaha. I am equal to all. I am impartial. Name dveshaha na priyaha. I don't have likes or dislikes towards anyone. Hating someone, loving someone. No. I am equal to all, whether they are devotees or non-devotees. This is the first line. Then what does Bhagwan say? Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya. But those who worship me, maite, they are in me. Teshu cha api aham. I am there in them. They are in me, I am in them. What does it mean? No doubt I am impartial, but still I am partial. Now let us try to understand what it means. See, Bhagwan Shankaracharya gives a beautiful example here. Suppose it's very cold, winter. So there is one person who is shivering in that cold. And there is a fireplace also. So there are two persons. One person goes to the fireplace and then he enjoys the warmth of the fire. Other person doesn't go to the fire. Now, as far as the fire is concerned, the fire is impartial, isn't it? It is giving the heat to all, but one person chose to come near fire and therefore now that person is enjoying the warmth. He is able to get rid of that cold. The other person doesn't go near, he suffers. From one standpoint, Bhagwan is impartial, no doubt, but another standpoint, from the standpoint of the devotee, he appears to be partial. Meaning what? Bhagwan's grace is there upon all. His blessings are there upon all. But some few people, they are open to that blessings, they get blessed. Others, they are closed, so then they suffer. To give another example, the sunlight. The sunlight falls on every place equally. But some rooms are dark. Why some rooms are dark? Rooms are dark because the windows are not opened, the doors are not opened. Sunlight is falling there. In fact, sunlight is waiting outside. Isn't it? So in some of our lives are dark, just like that room. And then we blame God. Who has to be blamed? Not the Lord. His blessings are there upon everyone. We alone have to be blamed. It is our responsibility to open the window. You don't have to create a sun. You don't have to create sunlight. It is already there. The only thing you need to do is open the window. Open the window means what? Open yourself to the teachings of the Lord. Try practicing it. Try living it. This is called opening up. Have faith in the teaching. Then you will see these wonders. So Bhagavan says, yes, from one side I am impartial, like the sunlight. Sunlight is impartial. But even then, from the standpoint of the devotee, I am partial. I hope you have understood it. In the same way, the breeze also. Whatever is Bhagavan's creation, everything is impartial. Breeze is there everywhere, but suppose the room is closed, airtight. The air inside that room remains stinky. Isn't it? What will the breeze do? The breeze will come, since the windows are open, it will change the route and go elsewhere. The ship, if the sails are not opened, the ship cannot move. But if the sails are opened, you can make use of that wind power and you can make your journey smooth. Isn't it? It is the same with Bhagavan's grace also. Bhagavan's blessings are also. Bhagavan's blessing is there upon everyone. He cannot but love us. Because He is our creator, He is our mother and father. Just like a mother or father cannot but love their children, Bhagavan also cannot but love His children. Whether He takes His name or not, that's a different matter. His love is always there. And His love is unconditional. But suppose the child says, I don't want your guidance. I know what I know. I know what is right. I don't need any guidance. Then what can the parents do? At the most, they can bless them. Okay. Be happy wherever you are. Isn't it? So His guidance is there. His blessing is there. His grace is there. Now the question is whether we are open to that or not. So wherever Bhagavad Gita statement comes, always you will find this clause. Surrender unto me. I will free you from all sins. 18th chapter. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami. So the first step who has to take? Not Bhagavan. We have to take. We have to allow the Lord to enter into our lives. That responsibility is ours. There is a very nice story. So there was a beautiful painting. And in that painting, what was the content? Jesus Christ knocking the door. Jesus Christ with a lantern knocking the door. This was the painting. So thousands of people came to see the painting. And then one person found a fault. So he came running to the painter and said, Sir, you have made a mistake in your painting. So then he brought the painter. So the painter asked, what is the mistake you have found? See, Jesus Christ holding the lantern and knocking the door. Sir, you have forgotten one thing. You have forgotten to put the handle for the door. Then the painter said, no, it's not a mistake. Handle is not outside, it is inside. Got the point? Jesus cannot open the door for you. Who has to decide whether the door should be opened or not? The one who is inside, the one who is in the dark. Right? So the lantern means the lantern of knowledge. So this has to be understood. Those who worship me, maite teshu chapyaham. They are in me, I am in them. In short, they become one with me. So the freedom is given to all of us, whether to invoke His grace or be shut off from His grace. Freedom is given. Accordingly, our life will take the turn. Now Bhagavan says, everyone in this world is fit to seek Him, to become one with Him. Let us chant 30 and 31. Api chet suduracharah bhajate mamananya bhag sadhureva samantavyah samyak vyavasito hi saha kshipram bhavati dharmatma shashvachantim nigacchati kaunteya pratijanihi na me bhaktah pranashyati अपि चेत् सुदुराचारः भजते मामनन्यभाक् साधुरेव समन्तव्यः सम्यक् व्यवसितो हि सः क्षिप्रं भवति धर्मात्मा शश्वच्छान्तिं निगच्छति कौन्तेय प्रतिजानीहि. Yes, another very famous verse. Name bhakta pranashyati. My devotee shall never perish. Is a promise from the Lord. The word from the Lord. Apichet, even if suduracharaha. Suduracharaha means what? Rank holder in durachara. A king in committing all kinds of crimes, vices, a rank holder in all, committing all vices. If such a person also bhajate mam, if he worship me ananya bhak, with single pointed mind, sadhureva samantavyaha, he has to be considered as a saintly person, a noble soul. According to his past, he may be a rank criminal. But the moment he has decided to turn towards me, he has to be considered as a saint. Because samyak vyavasitaha hisaha, he has taken the best decision in his life. The most important, the most precious decision, the wisest decision he has taken in his life. So therefore he has to be considered as a noble person, as a saintly person. Kshipram bhavati dharmatma, because very soon he is going to become a dharmatma, an embodiment of virtues. A righteous person, a saintly person, a noble person. Kshipram, very soon. And thus, shashvachantim nigacchati, he will attain eternal peace. He will soon attain oneness with me. Hey Kaunteya pratijanihi, know for sure, declare unto the world. What? Name bhaktaha pranashyati, my devotee shall never perish. It's a word from God. So it doesn't matter what kind of background you have, how much sins you have committed in your life, it doesn't matter. Sarvam jnanaplavenaiva vrajinam santarishyasi, Bhagavan says in 4th chapter. Suppose you have committed so much sins that it will be equal to an ocean. Suppose a person has committed ocean of sins. Bhagavan says with knowledge, with a boat of knowledge, he can easily cross over that ocean. The moment a person turns to God, that very same moment, his life is transformed. He becomes a changed person. So this is the assurance given by Bhagavan. And we find in our Puranas so many cases. Valmiki, who was he? He was a dacoit, Ratnakara. His job was to kill people and rob them. And ultimately what happened to him? To such an extent he was a sinner that he could not even chant the name of the Lord. That much sins he had committed. Rama, he could not chant. So therefore he chanted Mara. And then to what heights he attained. Isn't it? Similarly, another case is Angulimal. It comes in the story of Buddha. He also becomes a saintly person. In Bhagavata Mahatmyam there is another person. Dhundukari. In Bhagavata Mahatmyam that story comes. Dhundukari. All kinds of possible sins he had committed. But then the turning point comes. It has to come to everyone. In Christian religion also there are so many saints like Saint Augustine. He was also living in sin, literally. And then the turning point. In our lives also we can find many instances where we have committed all kinds of sins. But Bhagavan says, doesn't matter. Forget the past. Turn towards me. You will definitely reach the highest. So therefore, everyone is fit to know this highest knowledge. That thought continues. Let us chant 32 and 33. Mam hi parthavyapashritya yepi syuh papayonayah striyo vaishyastatha shudraha tepi yanti param gatim kim punar brahmanah punyah bhakta rajarshyastatha anityamasukham lokam imam prapya bhajasva mam mam hi parthavyapashritya yepi syuh papayonayah striyo vaishyastatha shudraha tepi yanti param gatim kim punar brahmanah punyah anityamasukham lokam imam prapya bhajasva mam. Yes. Now comes the most controversial sloka of Bhagavad Gita. Most controversial. So what does Bhagavan say? Taking refuge unto me, mam vyapashritya, even those who are those papayonayah, born in sinful wombs. Striyaha, women. Vaishyaha, the Vaishya community, the business class. Shudraha, the Shudra community, the labor class, low caste. They also, tepi yanti param gatim, they also attain the highest. So even those born in sinful wombs, even they attain the highest after taking refuge in me. Now the controversy is, Bhagavan, how can you say these people are papayonis? Now there are two ways of interpreting. These people need not be papayonis. It can be interpreted as papayonis and these, or papayonis who are these. Both the interpretation possible according to Sanskrit. Now whatever be the interpretation, we have to thoroughly understand what it means. We have to get rid of the confusion. So therefore I thought I will spend some time here. We know in India, this caste system is very famous. What are the four castes? Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishyas and Shudras. Now we have to understand this caste system is based on what? Now listen. Number one, it is based on jati. Now there are three types: jati, guna and karma. Based on these three, you have Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. What is jati? Jati means the family in which you are born. So jati Brahmana means the one person who is born in Brahmana jati. So jati Brahmana, jati Kshatriya, jati Vaishya, jati Shudra. Now among them, who is the superior one? Who is superior according to their birth? Brahmana or Shudra? This is a mistake. All are equal. By birth, no one becomes superior. This is where we go wrong. By birth, no one is higher, no one is lower. As per the jati is concerned, they are all equal. Now next is according to karma. Who is a Brahmana according to karma? The one who thinks, one who has this ability to think deep, he is a Brahmana. They are called as think tanks. They can penetrate into any subject and make complicated things easy. Any person who can do that is a Brahmana. According to their profession. Karma means profession. So who is a Kshatriya? Kshatriya is the one who are very good leaders in the society. They can easily get work done from others. They can lead and guide others. They are very good executives. They are called as Kshatriyas, the leaders. The third one is Vaishyas, Karma Vaishya. Who is a Karma Vaishya? The one by profession who is money minded. Wherever they go, they can mint money. Whatever business they start, that will run into profit. These kinds of people are called Vaishyas, Karma Vaishya we can say. Right? They are very good in earning wealth, managing wealth. They are very good. They are called as Vaishyas. And the fourth one is Karma Shudra. The Shudras are not good in any of these things, but they have a very strong body. So they can do any work with their strong body. Normally the labor class. Now tell me, with respect to karma, who is superior? Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra? Good, thank you. They are all equal. Because all professions are equally important in the society. If one class of people are missing, whether it is a country, whether it is an organization, whether it is a team, they will collapse. Even in a family, it will collapse. We need all the four. We need people who can think, who can plan. We need people who can lead and guide. We need people who can generate wealth. And also we need people who can physically put forth effort, put brick by brick and build the building. We need all the four. In the society, all have to be equally respected. Now comes the third one with respect to guna. Guna means what? It is with respect to the composition of the mind. How pure a person's mind is. So who is a Brahmana? The Brahmana is the one who has sattvic content maximum, then rajasic, then tamasic. So I hope you know these three. Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Sattva indicates purity of mind. Rajas indicates activity and Tamas indicates laziness, dullness, inertia. So who is a Brahmana? The Brahmana is the one who has the sequence SRT. SRT means maximum sattva, maximum purity, maximum selflessness. And then comes Rajas, then comes Tamas. Who is a Kshatriya? RST. What is the first one? Rajas. He is very active. But immediately after Rajas comes Sattva. So therefore, he is selflessly active. RST. So who is a Guna Kshatriya? Guna Kshatriya is the one who is selflessly active. Then comes third one. Guna Vaishya. Who is a Guna Vaishya? It is RTS. So he is also active, but he is selfishly active. He is selfishly active. Such a person is called Guna Vaishya. And the last one, Guna Shudra. What is the combination? T, R, S. First is T. Now, among these four, who is the superior? Who is the higher one? Who is the higher, Brahmana or Shudra? No doubt about it, it is Brahmana. Anyone who has got a pure mind is high because he is nearer to God. And anyone who is nearer to God is worshipful. This is the point. Have you got it? So now, what we are saying is, let us not try to become a Jati Brahmana. We can't also. You need not also. Let us not try to become a Karma Brahmana, but let us try to become a Guna Brahmana. Let us try to purify the mind. A person may be Jati Brahmana, but he may be a Guna Shudra. He may be born in a Brahmana family, but his attitude will be that of what you call very tamasic person. It is possible. In the same way, reverse is possible. He may be a Jati Shudra, but he may be a Guna Brahmana. So any Guna Brahmana is worshipful, whatever be the kind of Jati he may be, whatever be the kind of family he may be born. That is why in all our scriptures they say, Brahmanas santu nirbhayaha, etc., etc. Brahmanas are praised. Now understand what kind of Brahmanas are praised. Brahmanas who are having virtues, who are selfless, who are pure, who are divine, containing all noble virtues. Such a person alone can be called as really Brahmanas. Now, with this definition, come here. So what does Bhagavan say? Vaishyaha tatha Shudraha, even they attain to my nature. So which kind of Vaishya, which kind of Shudra are being spoken of here? Not Jati, it is Guna. Not Jati. So what is Bhagavan saying? Any Shudra also, he can also purify the mind and come to me. I am available for all. He may be a Guna Shudra, doesn't matter, he can come to me after purification of the mind. He may be a Guna Vaishya, even then he can come to me. Everyone can come. In the same way, now this term also has to be defined. What is this term? Stri. What is a Stri? Stri doesn't mean just physical body. Now see, in spirituality, your qualification is determined not by your physical body, but your mental temperament. So it is the mind which is more important, not the body. Isn't it? In spirituality, qualification is in terms of the purity of the mind, the content of the mind, the composition of the mind. What kind of mind are you possessing? That is what is going to decide whether you are going to reach there or not. So when now it is said Stri, please remember, it is not the physical body which is termed here, it is the kind of mind which you possess. So what is being criticized here? Now the term Stri is used because normally there are some of the defects which are normally found in women. Number one, too much of attachment to the worldly things. Too much of possessiveness. Jealousies, etc. are very intense in them. This is normally found, but there are so many exceptions. And moreover, they always feel themselves to be weak and helpless. Normally. So now what does Bhagavan say? Remember, these characteristics may be present in men also. If there is a person who is having these characteristics, he is only man, is a woman in man's body. Pujya Gurudev used to say, at that time, Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister of India. He used to say, in the entire Congress cabinet, there is only one man. So it is not necessary that just because you are born as a woman, you must have these qualifications. And in fact, in our own life, we have seen plenty of cases where the woman is showing more interest in spirituality than the husband. Very many cases. She is exhibiting more detachment, more maturity, more dispassion than the husband. Husband is tied down. The lady is free. She has lot of open-mindedness. So when it is said Stri, these are some of the common features which we find in ladies. Too much of sentimentalism, emotions. And normally in ladies we find that emotions rule over the intellect. They are not able to decide things rationally. You can't argue with this kind of woman rationally. They are ruled by sentiments. Whenever a person dies in any home, who cries? You will find ladies beating their chest and crying. Of course, exceptions are there. It is so because normally they operate from their sentiments, their emotions, etc. Normally men are rational. They think. They decide based on logic. They are more rational. This is what we find. Now what does Bhagavan say? Even this kind of person also who have this defect in their personality, even they can reach me. What they have to do? Simple. They are ruled over by the emotions and sentiments. Let them turn the sentiments towards me. That's all. I am emotional. No problem. Let me be emotional thinking about God. Let me turn the direction of my sentiments towards God. Then your greatest weakness becomes your greatest strength. This is what Bhagavan is saying. The thing which you consider yourself the greatest weakness, that itself becomes the greatest strength. And another one thing is about their helplessness. It is true, and we have to admit that it is a male-dominated society. Nothing to argue about it. Men are born physically strong, women are born physically weak. No doubt about it. We have to accept the fact as it is. But now, that itself can become the greatest blessing for women. How is it? Whenever you are weak, you tend to be helpless. And whenever you are helpless, you easily surrender unto God. Remember, surrender comes naturally to a person who feels helpless. Yes or no? Yes. So such a person can easily surrender unto God. Isn't it a blessing in disguise? It is. On one side, it appears to be a disadvantage, but the moment it comes to spirituality, the moment you turn that helplessness, you convert that helplessness into surrender, that becomes your greatest strength. As long as we don't feel ourselves helpless, we don't surrender wholeheartedly. Look at that Draupadi. What happened? When she was utterly helpless, then that prayer came from the depth of their heart, raising both the hands. Then what happened? Bhagavan had to bless them, isn't it? So Bhagavan is saying, externally, superficially, it may appear that there are certain defects in your personality, certain disadvantages. Even those disadvantages also can be turned to your advantage. This is the whole point. The Vaishyas, business community, what is their only mind? Profit, profit, profit. Bhagavan says, fine. That thinking is what is needed in spirituality also. What will I get attitude, isn't it? These are the things you will get. But immortality, infinity, peace, contentment, joy. So come this side. So your business-minded attitude also becomes a blessing in disguise, isn't it? You are looking for profit. This is the best profession. The most profitable profession, rather, isn't it? Now, who are the Shudras? Shudras are people who are very stubborn. They don't want any other new ideas, and they are not able to think also. They are very stubborn. Bhagavan says, be stubborn in my case. I want God alone. Be stubborn in that. Then you also reach there. What I am trying to say is, your own weakness can become your greatest strength, provided it is turned towards God. Now, is it fine? I hope I have done justice to this verse. So there is nothing which is negative here. Right. Then Bhagavan says, Kim punar brahmanaha punya. Then what to talk of brahmanas? Even Vaishyas and Shudras can attain me. Then what to talk of brahmanas and kshatriyas? Therefore, anityam asukham lokam imam prapya bhajasvamam. Therefore, after having gained this world, which is anityam and asukham. Now just look at this. The Bhagavan who has created this world, how does he define this world? Anityam, impermanent. Asukham, painful, sorrowful. After having attained this world which is painful and sorrowful, anityam, asukham. Now you have already gained it. You are already born. Now the only choice is imam prapya mam bhajasva. Worship me. Turn to me. This is the only way of coming out of it. Enough of staying here. This world is like a hospital. Don't think of remaining in this hospital for long. Who come to a hospital? Sick people come to hospital, isn't it? And what is the disease we are all suffering from? Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. Anger, greed, jealousy, arrogance, lust. These are all the disease. So in order to get rid of this disease, we all have come to this hospital. And who are the doctors of the hospital? The Mahatmas, the saints and sages. They are the ones who will guide you. Once upon a time, they were also sick people. Now they have come out of it and now they are guiding us. As long as you have not come out of this disease of worldliness, again and again you will be admitted to the same hospital. Isn't it? So therefore, what has to be done? Don't try to inquire how many sick people are there in the hospital. Go and chat with everyone. No, you are not here to count the number of sick people. You are here to get rid of your disease. Right? So Bhagavan says, Imam prapya bhajaso mam, turn towards me. Now the entire essence of 9th chapter is summarized in the last verse. Let us chant that verse. Manmana bhava mad bhaktaha madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi yuktaivam atmanam matparayanaha manmana bhava madbhaktaha madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi yuktaivam atmanam matparayanaha. The summary of this entire chapter. Manmana bhava, fix your mind in me. Madbhakto bhava, be devoted to me. Madhyaji bhava, worship me. Mam namaskuru, surrender unto me. Mat parayano bhava, keep me as your supreme goal. See how many times Bhagavan is telling. Why is it repeated again and again? It is repeated in order to express his love, express his eagerness. He wants his children to reach him as soon as possible with minimum suffering. So therefore he is repeating again and again. This way if you live, what will happen? Evam atmanam yuktva, thus having united yourself with me, mam eva eshyasi, you attain to my nature, which is the highest goal of life. The entire essence of 9th chapter is summarized here. Why all these discussions? All these discussions are only for this. May you single-pointedly fix your attention upon the Supreme Lord. Right. Om Tat Saditi Srimad Bhagavad Gitasu Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yogo Nama Navamo Dhyayah. Thus ends the 9th chapter, which is named Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yoga. Royal knowledge, royal secret. This chapter ends, which contains the dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. And what is the content of their discussion? Brahma Vidya is the content of the discussion, which is the very essence of Upanishads. The essence of the Upanishad is the very essence of Bhagavad Gita also. Thus, this chapter comes to an end. I sincerely invoke the blessings of the Lord. May we attain this state as early as possible, if possible in this birth itself. Om Swasti Prajabhyah Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahim Mahishah Go Brahmanebhyah Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Kale Varshatu Parjanyah Prithvi Sasya Shalini Desho Yam Shobharahitah Brahmana Santu Nirbhayah सर्वेषां स्वस्ति भवतु, सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु, सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु, सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु, सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। असतो मा सद्गमय, तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय, मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते, पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ।